Well, here we are again. The saga continues. Did you miss me? I was reluctant to continue talking about this, but you know what? Why not? Why not? I mean, why not just talk about it? Whatever. And I will. And a disclaimer about that. So, what's going on? Am I spirit channeling? No. Am I remote viewing? No. Am I sitting for hours on end meditating? No. Am I taking shrooms daily? Not even once. Am I marijuana taking? No. None of the above. None. I don't know what's going on. I'm like in a walking meditation. The most meditation I do is I stand around for a few minutes and look at the birds and maybe close my eyes a little bit and take a few breaths and just try to calm down. That's my meditation for the day. So I don't know. I can't tell you why this is all coming right now. But today was so much that I'm not going to be able to even get to it in this video. I don't think there's any way. I'll probably have to split this up to two. Some of it's going to be familiar information that I'll have to go over. But in general, if you haven't seen the prior videos on the crystal tree and even Pedgo 2, then if this is your first video on this, then you're not going to get what I'm talking about. I'm just warning you right now. So basically, there's some things I missed, okay? So when we're talking about the garden and why the arborists and gardeners and the people working there and living, why did they decide to create that frequency transmission to our realm? I never answered that question, and I just know that they did. So that's one of the questions I asked today, like internally asked, essentially. And the answer was kind of interesting. Another thing is why is Horus coming here? What is the reason? Why is he in a sleep state? Why is he in suspended animation? Because he is. What what events caused that to happen? I'm going to talk about what happened to the original garden, because remember, one of the first videos I made, I talked about a replica. There's a replica of it because the original was destroyed. And it wasn't just destroyed. Something happened that's even worse than destruction. Okay, so before that, I'm just going to talk about more information as to what the garden looked like. And when I say garden, what I'm referring to is a civilization. It's not, you think of garden, you think of some little garden. No, this was huge. This was a planet-wide thing, it seems like. But they did have a central garden or like a city that had like, where all of the energy kind of flowed to basically, or where their central hub was, for lack of a better word, that did resemble a garden. And my gosh, was it beautiful. What I was seeing is hard to describe. There is massive structures made out of what appear to be vines and plants. And these are multi-story massive structures that are completely made out of natural materials that are emitting this very high frequency that you could feel and hear. And the resonant energy is very powerful. And this whole place was like that. There was structures that were made of plant. There was structures that was made of shimmering stone. It was like marble, but it was like just this beautiful, like kaleidoscope of colors. And these with these huge columns. And there was things that looked like Fibonacci spirals or gardens arranged in like such a spiral way and other odd geometric shapes. I remember seeing giant plants that were like these giant leaves, and they had like this ball of energy like emitted from them that was coming out of them. next thing I see, excuse me, I see a beautiful woman, um, wearing this gorgeous blue dress. And she's white. Her skin is very white. Okay. And she has a beautiful headdress on, and it looked like the rays of the sun coming out behind her, like the way it was put on her head. And she has this humble look about her and loving look about her. And she's on this platform, and on each side of her is a group of men, mostly, I think. And they're all very tall. Everyone is very tall, like like humans, but they're very tall. Okay, so remember, just to recap from the first videos, we had a very old civilization here on Earth that ascended into a higher dimension, into a higher oscillation of frequency, a bigger information field. That's what a higher dimension is. It's more information. But it's located below our Earth and inverted upside down. So in order to see it, you would have to literally match the frequency and then put yourself upside down and go, and it's weird. Okay, I'm not going to get into that. But and it gets even weirder when in order to get there you have to go through a portal in the sun. Weird. I'm not going there right now. Okay. Um so what I didn't talk about is that not all of them ascended. There were some left behind on the earth, of course. Here we are today. But the original people that were left behind, they are what we call today the Hebrews. Anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let me talk about the beautiful woman. She is standing on the platform, and these men on either side are standing in very specific poses. Okay? They have, I don't know what they were. They were standing somewhere, sitting in a meditative pose. But it's almost like they were trying to spell a word with their bodies, like like the YMCA guys. That's what it like reminded me of. And she's walking down the aisle in between them, and this is outside. And she's walking with a lotus in her hand, and I'm like, Pedgo too, Lily with the lotus, right? So she's walking with a lotus, and she walks down into this beautiful pool of water. It was this turquoise shimmering color. And in that pool of water, there was the crystal tree. There was the central hub of the central hub, essentially. And there it was, like just shining and shimmering and just vibrant, full of life, emitting this enormous energy on its own. But this is when it gets really weird, was that when she puts the lotus into the water, it floats there, and it floats to the tree, and then it goes inside it. And when that happens, it's like almost like fiber optic cables of light converge and unite everything together. So there's other crystal structures, and they're all united together, and the entire sky becomes illuminated with this brilliant rainbow shimmering light that is just glorious to look at. I'm like looking at these people, and I'm like, dude, our life sucks here. I don't care how sheltered or rich you are or how fun your life is. Like, imagine that. How glorious that would be. That's what I was thinking. So they were overjoyed, and she was happy, and the tree was happy, right? For lack of a better word. Um, and then the scene changes. So this looks like another day now or something. And I did get the sense that this place did have day and night, but they didn't move about time the same way. Remember, there is that time dilation I spoke of a few thousand years here is like 50 years over there, but they don't live within like moments of time like we do. They do have day and night because I did see a nighttime sky later, and and their stars look much closer to them, by the way, than they do over here. They look much closer. Um, and Yeah, Dina, I'm making a video. Thanks for showing me Octavia. You want to just go ahead and
She was running around on the floor again.
yeah, well,
Why? Tell me why.
well, thanks. You're gonna be in the video. You don't want to just come say hi now?
No.
Nobody's ever seen you on my videos, Dina. Okay. Thanks for interrupting, though. I was really deep in thought. So can you just not interrupt anymore? Please? All right. So, okay, so it was another day, and then I see this creature, and he looks weird. Is a very short, green-skinned creature, reptoid, wearing a red cape. Wearing a red cape. And he looks like Superman, like a red cape like Superman. Um, and he's over there, and all these people are surrounding him, looking at him like, what is he doing there? And then I'm taken back to what led up to that. And I see that that is the reason why they started transmission. Remember, so the crystal trees are um, angelic hosts. So they contain high frequency bodies of consciousness from much higher dimensions than even where they are, and in which they communicated with. So they were very actually protected from dark forces, higher dimensional dark forces, advanced alien tech, or whatever the case may be. But they made themselves very vulnerable when they took some of those crystals and they started transmitting the frequency into our dimension, because they were trying to contact the ones left behind. That was their point, was that there was people that were stuck here, and they were trying to bring them over to their dimension using that frequency wavelength. But they exposed themselves to the lower dimensional universe by doing such a thing. And what does Osiris need? He's on the hunt for DNA. That's what he wants. He is a dark lord that rules over huge kingdoms. Dark kingdoms. This is like some kind of Star Wars stuff. But that's how I saw him, like that he's a ruler over multitudes of like ET races. Essentially, he's a very powerful, not only a very powerful leader, a very powerful magician, as we get to see. And so that's the reason why I never explained this before in any other videos. So he comes down, and he claims dominion over this garden civilization. And he actually goes to the higher dimension first. That's where I mix things up. We'll get to later about how this Earth ended up contacting what they thought was the ascended civilization, but they were masquerading because at that point they were taken over by the Dark Ones. So they were actually contacting people mimicking their own people. That's what they were. And so what ended up happening is that he took over, and the people, the tall giants that were living there, some of them escaped. The ones that didn't, he used them as a DNA bank. So he did all sorts of experiments on them. Remember, like creating jackal-headed men or falcon-headed men, such as Horus. They didn't interbreed And that's really like the Bible says. They spliced DNA and they made chimeras of all sorts of weird creatures that in which things there wasn't a match for this type of DNA. These were like monsters, okay? And so they altered this landscape. The tree declined. The angelic hosts that were in the crystals, they either started to be corrupted themselves by this by these dark forces, by these monstrosities that were now taking over the garden, or they left that sphere, that crystal sphere, and were replaced by Osiris's um, darker sort of demonic hosts, for lack of a better word. And so they used these poor people that were very highly intelligent, they were very spiritually evolved, and they altered their DNA. And so that affected not just their DNA, because DNA actually works like a fiber optic cable that connects everything together. Your DNA is connected with the entire universe. So if you change one set of beings, it will, in another dimension below us, is going to start changing things up here as well. And even more so once they made contact with the earthly beings, which became the second Egypt, and basically gave them instructions and orders to build the Great Pyramid. So the first Egypt did not have pyramids. And the purpose of the pyramids was multi-purpose, but they were creating a permanent land bridge that solidified both dimensions together so that they could extract, DNA and light energy from both realms simultaneously back to through Saturn and onto Sirius and so on and so forth. So, but the pyramids themselves, I'm probably gonna have to do an entire separate video on that because that is a lot of stuff just in itself. There's a lot to do, has a lot to do with sensory deprivation. Um, there's sort of artificial components to it that are more like AI as well, and it's really an interesting thing these pyramids were and what they were used for. But one of the key purposes was to basically create a permanent bridge, like so they created a pyramid on that side as well. So they built one there. So we have one upside down, one right side up, and they're tethered together, and they feed off of each other from both realms. So that created a very big problem once something happened. But before I get into that, we're going to talk about Horus. And one thing I need to mention is that our buddy, I shouldn't call him that, Aleister Crowley, had an unusual obsession with Horus. And I'm going to look into that. I don't know much about Crowley, but I know that he did talk about him quite a lot. And I want to see what he has to say about Horus because this might be relevant to this. So if anyone does know what Crowley says about Horus, then please let me know. But yeah, so Horus didn't like his dad. He didn't like his dad at all. Not only because he was already born a hybrid with his mother Isis, who was not of the same race as Osiris, but they altered him again to where his head became that of a falcon. So he became basically a chimera freak, which he did not like, by the way. But he had the capability of masking himself and basically transforming or mimicking other beings, which is going to be important later. So, what happened was not all the people that were taken for DNA harvesting by Osiris, not all of them were subject to DNA experimentation. Some actually escaped, and they escaped into these deep caverns and managed to actually stay away from Osiris. Who came with them? Horus did. Horus came with those hired the garden people. He came with them to hide in the cave away from his dad. But he was an imposter. He masked himself. His falcon head came off, and he looked like the Jesus of iPad Go 2. So what did these people do? They placed them. So some of them placed themselves in suspended animation to wait the storm out. Basically, they think that um, Osiris is going to stay here for a time, do whatever he's going to do, and then he's just going to leave. And then by that time, they'll wake themselves up, essentially. And then there's others who were left behind to basically look over the avatar bodies of those who were left in suspended animation. And their job was also to look into the future of their realm and our realm to see possible outcomes of what can be done to get rid of Osiris and restore the garden. So, just a second. They found out that Osiris was not one of them and was an imposter. At first, they wanted to destroy the avatar body. Not Osiris, I mean Horus. Sorry. They wanted to destroy him, but they did not. They didn't because of a video I talked about earlier, because of this moral conundrum and dilemma that they see, is that if they bring him in to rule over the dominion of the lower realm, which is ours, that he's going to create such a imbalance in frequency that it's going to basically permanently close off Osiris and all of his minions from the garden, and they could go back to square one, essentially. So, short-term pain, but in the long run, it's worth it. And then the earthly beings here will eventually be essentially rescued, or they would go on to another world, or whatever the case may be. So it's again this moral dilemma of the ends justifying the means, right? So you bring in an evil bastard for short-term pain, but for long-term gain is the way of thinking of these people, essentially, who did not put themselves in suspended animation. But what did the people who did put themselves in suspended animation, what did they do? They left their bodies and their souls roamed free, and many of those souls incarnated right here in this realm. Why? For that very reason. There are some of them who helped build CERN. There are some of them who are helping initiate the magic that will provide the opening for Horus to come. And that's why they're here. And then basically, this gets more weird and more complicated. But yeah, there's a lot of incarnates here from that garden. But the original garden, ladies and gentlemen, is no more. It was destroyed. But how? In the strangest of ways. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Sorry, this is a ton of information. This is just really overwhelming, so it's very hard for me to properly kind of put a chronological order on things. So Osiris himself, I mean Horus himself, wants to come back and rule over his father's kingdom, because he doesn't like his father and he doesn't support what he's created here. So as soon as he does come, he's going to destroy everything that represents his father, things like the banking system, things like everything that's related to his like um sort of warrior mentality and replace it with more of like a collective mentality and all sorts of other things that he doesn't like, but mostly he just wants to cause pain and havoc on the people here because he wants to upset his father. He wants to hurt his father's subjects, basically, because he wants to this is a family feud. He wants daddy mad, basically, right? So yeah, so he's willingly gonna awaken or resurrect himself to return here as well. Um, and So there's a big problem, though. They created a much bigger problem than just a garden that's poisoned and emitting dark energy. It went a huge step further than that. There was an entity named Set who also did not like Osiris, and he felt that Osiris was greedy and taking way too much energy for himself. Because remember how all these movies and shows they show us you take the energy to grow yourself, right? You grow by taking, right? Aladdin, all these movies, and this is the same idea. So the more energy he extracts, the bigger he becomes, the more powerful of a negative entity he becomes, especially if he's taking this energy in traumatic ways, right? Wars, endless wars, things like that, right? So Set, not happy with Osiris. He wanted a bigger cut of what this crystal tree was emanating. And he wanted to hurt Osiris by not cutting him, by cutting his body. His body was the tree. His body was the tree. His body and the tree, and Osiris's body and the tree were linked. Okay, like they sort of have this symbiotic relationship with each other. Like one can't go without the other at this point because he's so dependent on it. Osiris is. So the body is actually the crystal tree. So what does Set do? He takes 14 pieces, just like the original story, cuts them up, and he throws them into the Nile River? No, that's a metaphor. He throws it into a nebulous cloud. This is a nebula. What is a nebula? A nebula is a condensed incubator of consciousness. Nebulas and dust clouds in space are regions where um, fragments of consciousness reconfigure themselves to birth new ideas, new stars, new solar systems, new planets, new beings. This is just a mesh of information, these nebulas. He takes these powerful crystals. If one of these crystals were to be destroyed or dropped on our dimension, one of them, it would destroy the whole place. This is emitting enormous amounts of energy, dark energy in this case. So he takes those 14 pieces and he takes it and he throws it into um, a space river, basically, a space nebula. And what does it do? It it creates a giant black hole. It creates a giant black hole that sucks these bastards into it. So you have these dark lords who are roaming about free, wreaking havoc, doing whatever they want. Now they suddenly find themselves stuck in this black hole. And that black hole is what became what we know today as hell. And I would agree with that because in my hellish out of body experience, that is precisely what I thought of when I was there. It really felt like I was in a black hole like I was in some kind of vacuum or vortex of timeless. I don't know. It was hard to explain, but they got sort of, I don't want to say trapped. Nobody's like truly trapped, but they kind of are stuck there for a bit. Um, and so the garden's destroyed. The crystal tree is everything is just this black rift. So now they have to take some of that energy and recreate a mimic of the garden. So now they need even more of it. So they're extracting more light energy. They have other things like artificial intelligence that are helping recreate this mimic. So this mimic of a garden, um, basically, you had the pyramids tethering us to that other dimension, and when set through the crystals and created the black hole, before that the pyramid had a pyramid cap or a capstone that was permanently emitting high frequency energy. It was like a plasma ray, and this plasma ray was I was seeing basically one circle this way, the other this way, and they were just one going the other way, the other, and they were shimmering circles. And this was thinning the veil between dimensions to have easier access between them. And so what happened when the black hole was created is that capstone on the pyramid shut off. The sky basically, everything just got enveloped into it, and the black hole basically went into our own reality. Um, we're not inside a black hole per se, but we're kind of on the periphery because that dimension, the hell dimension, is in the black hole, and we're just kind of tethered around the event horizon. And so that instead of having an open gateway to was once a garden, the pyramid is now the gateway to hell. Is the gateway to hell now. Okay, and how the pyramids worked and all that, that's a separate video, going way too long now. But the point, well, what is the point of all this, ladies and gentlemen, is that so when Osiris came, I forgot to mention that he did put the hex on the beautiful queen, and she is basically, her body is there, but her mind is, remember I talked about the arcane fractal realms? Her mind is basically stuck in a maze, Alice in Wonderland. And she's kind of in this dazed, confused, hypnotic state, demanding blood as Osiris. And now she's in this mimic of a garden, and these other deities are there too, and they have to steal a lot of energy to recreate this garden that's inside a black hole now. Okay? So, moral of the story is if they don't bring Horus here, we will be subject to this black hole basically existing in our realm for eons to come, and perpetual slavery under Osiris for a long time to come, and perhaps other deities or friends of his. If he does come, then he's going to create that necessary imbalance that is going to permanently detach our tether from that fallen garden, which is hell, and it's going to permanently detach us from it. It's a moral dilemma, is it not? it's a conundrum, and I'm not trying to sit here and say Horus is good. No, no, no. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like these are the sorts of decisions these higher dimensional beings have to make. This is the sort of responsibility that you might have one day as a more evolved being. The more evolved you are, the more responsibility you tend to have over creation and over the creative processes of the universe. It's no different than, you're in a company or you go from becoming a dishwasher in a restaurant to the restaurant manager, more responsibility. And so these sorts of things might come up where, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And it's kind of a trap, but this how it happens in our lives as well. We sometimes get into such moral dilemmas. So, yeah. So in summary, um, the garden fell. Some escaped into a cave. Suspended animation. Incarnated here to build the machine that he will come if they build. He's gonna come, permanently close the door from Osiris, and things will start anew. And it will create this sort of time reversal effect on the garden's end, where it's gonna go back to the beginning before Osiris ever came, and it's gonna be like a fresh start for them essentially. For us here, I'm not exactly sure yet, but I'll get into that later perhaps. It's getting way too long. But I'm sorry if this video was all over the place, guys. Like, this is really hard for me to organize my thoughts because I get these, like, basically like data dumps. I mean, and I have to piece it all together. I don't know how to explain it properly, so I'm sorry if this didn't make that much sense. I really tried my best to make it make sense. And next time I'll talk about the pyramids and maybe some other stuff that may come up. But the only thing you really need to know is that the original garden, as of now, is gone. It's a black hole. They have a fake one. And when I do talk about the pyramids, I'll talk about how that communication took place between now the fallen garden and this earth, and how they were tricked into following those hideous genetically mutated monsters as gods who demanded blood. Peace.